Welcome, everyone, to the Obtuse Angles Wrestling Podcast with Kyle and Jeremy. This week, part 2 of our fantastic interview with Del the Patriot Wilkes, a guy who has worked all over AWA, Global Wrestling, All Japan, WCW, WWF. If you've not done so yet, please go back, check out part 1 of the interview last week. He talks about working in Japan, the differences in styles, his first run in AWA, working with Vern Gagne, working with Andre the Giant, all of that and so much more. Check that out, then come back here. Please like us at Obtuse Podcast on Twitter. Check it out. All of the information, all of our future guests, all of the future topics we're going to be covering. Please like us on Facebook and please subscribe to us on iTunes, man. Jeremy and I love this show. We love it so much. We have so much fun doing it. That being said, we put so much work in and we would love to make a damn dollar off this show, and helping us, subscribing to us on iTunes is going to help us out with that. Once again, I got to thank the Patriot for the interview last week and for the one that you're about to hear. This is riveting stuff, man. And I know it's a bit deeper, it's a bit darker than we usually go, but it's such an interesting story that we're gonna come back to the usual stuff next week. But we had to help Del share this story, and please check out his documentary, and we're going to get to that in just 1 second. First, though, wrapping up the interview right now with the Patriot, it's time for part 2 of our interview with Del Wilkes. Flash forwarding, after Japan, like I said, you head to WCW, 94 to 95. I think for a lot of people, this is where a lot of, at least American wrestling fans, were introduced to the Patriots. You were in a tag team with Buff Bagwell, Stars and Stripes. What was your WCW experience like?
Well, it started out good. I was excited about getting back to the States. As you said, I'd been in Japan for a few years. Body needed a break as well. That Japanese style was, started to take a toll on the body. So I was glad to get back to the States and work for WCW. They had strong TV as well with TBS, and started out good. Went in as a singles wrestler. Then they decided to put Bagwell and I together and form a team called Stars and Stripes, and we had a good run there. And there were a lot of great tag teams there. And tag team wrestling was much more part of the business back then than it is now. When you've got 4 guys in the ring, you can have some phenomenal matches. And we had Harlem Heat, Pretty Wonderful, the Nasty Boys, and other great tag teams that were in there. But after a while, I'd signed a 3-year deal with them, and probably about halfway through that thing, when they brought in Hogan they took Hogan from Vince and brought him in. They brought Savage in. They brought Duggan in, Beefcake, and they just raided Vince's roster and started bringing in that WWF talent. And then everything changed. The direction of the company changed. And it all became about those guys and a lot less about the guys that predated them in the company and were there before them. And so it all became about that group of guys and Hogan's buddies and Hogan's friends and Savage's buddies and Savage's friends. And so the rest of us were sort of put on the back burner. And so it wasn't long after that. That's when I decided just to, I'd had enough and I was ready for a move and left the company.
And that's when you returned to Japan, right?
That's correct, yes.
What was your second run in Japan? Did you enjoy that as much as the first one?
Yeah, I did, because when I went back the second time, they, were going to use me in a completely different way. Baba did things a lot different than we see them done now. Baba was, I hate to use the term old school because it's used so often now, but he was old school, where Baba took his time in really, really developing stars. And I got a monster push the first time I was there. But I go back the second time, and I'm elevated even more now in a different spot. And they've put me and Kabashi and Johnny Ace together as a 3-man tag team. And I was able to get a victory over Kawada, one of the huge Japanese stars over there. So they were going to do even, bigger things with us. And so it was good to be back. It was good to be around those guys. That was a group of guys that were like family to me. Some of my closest friends in the business were a part of the Americans that worked for that company. Doug Furness was my very best friend that I ever had in the business. So it was good to be back and to be around those guys and to be back working for Baba and that style.
Now, I got to ask you this because, unfortunately, I'm an American wrestling fan. I grew up, I know so much about WCW, WWF, but I never saw you in Japan. Were you working heel in Japan as this patriotic American character, or were you babyface?
No, there's really neither one. Again, when you're working a style and you're doing business the way we did, where there's no heat that's generated through a disqualification, through a run-in, through a manager doing something. You've got clean finishes every night. There are no promos on our TV shows. Nobody's cutting interviews. So it's just all based on the action in the ring.
Wow.
So even though I was dressed in the flag and, waved the flag and was the Patriot, you really weren't a heel, you really weren't a baby face. It was just based on, your toughness, your desire to get in the ring and just work hard for a very educated, a very smart fan base in Japan. And that's what they appreciated, was just your willingness to work and your effort and your attempt to give them good, solid matches.
That's so interesting. So you do Japan and then you leave and go to WWF. Now, was this a case of WWF kind of, I don't want to say stealing you away, but, giving you a call saying, hey, Dale, we're going to give you X amount of money, come over? Or were you looking to leave Japan and you were the one who seeked out WWF?
Well, I had worked for Vince back in the early 90s. Rick Martel had gotten hurt, and I think this may have been 91, and they took him off the road for a few weeks, several weeks. And so I went in and subbed for Martel and had an opportunity then to go to work for Vince, but it just didn't work out. There were other opportunities that were presenting themselves to me, and I took advantage of those. So now we fast forward to 97, and I'm contacted by Bruce Pritchard. I knew Bruce from the Global days. He was there in Global when we were starting the company. I also knew Jim Ross. Jim had contacted me as well about coming to work for him. So I flew up and met with Vince, and we spent a couple hours talking and walked out of that day with a 3-year deal.
3-year now, were you excited to go to WWF at this time? Because I think, to me, unquestionably, the most that you were pushed and the most exposure that you ever got in the U.S. was that run with Bret Hart. I mean, to me, I can't think of another time, and maybe only a few, where you came in and was it your first match or one of your first matches in the company was in the main event of a pay-per-view against the world champion. That is huge.
Yeah, it was really good timing. Of course, Bret isn't so much in life about timing. And I tell this story. We have a documentary that's out now that a little later on we'll tell the fans how they can get it.
Absolutely.
But in there, I tell the story about when I went and met with Vince about going to work for him. He wanted me to work there, but he just wasn't sold on the Patriot character. He just felt like at that point in time in the wrestling business, a mask guy just really couldn't get over maybe that it was something that was good in the 70s, maybe good in the 80s, but at this point in time in the 90s, it just the fan base wouldn't accept it. But when I walked out the first night there, my first show for Vince, and he saw the reaction of the fans and the way they responded to me, and they remembered me from Global, they remembered me from WCW, and then I think it convinced him that, hey, this guy can help me out and be an asset to the company. So he immediately dropped me in that program with Bret, and it was great timing. Bret had just turned heel. Here's this Canadian that's bad-mouthing America. He's going all over the country, practically all over the world, bad-mouthing our country and the way we do things here. And then along comes this guy and basically draping himself in the flag, and it just was perfect timing for he and I to work that program together.
Well, it absolutely was. I mean, it was fantastic. I mean, to the point where, looking back on it, I thought that he brought you in because it made so much sense, right? I mean, the Bret Hart was doing this anti-USA character in the storyline, and you were the most patriotic wrestler of all time. You guys had a great match, and then seemingly very shortly after you wrestled that great match with Bret and you had this run in the main event, you left. You were gone. I mean, was that because you had to retire because of injuries?
It was. When I got to Japan for my second go-round, I was really starting to feel the effects of the years that the business had done to me, and especially working that style in Japan. And also, too, you couple with that, before I got into the business, all the years of football that I had played, and my body had been through a lot. And I probably did a lot of things maybe I shouldn't have done. I remember very early in my career, matter of fact, one of the first times I ever went to Japan, I prided myself. I'm a big guy, 285, 290 pounds, and I'm a good athlete. I can move good. I can jump. I can do things that a lot of big guys can't do. So therefore, I did things that a lot of big guys can't do. Drop kicks off the top turnbuckle, the Patriot missile off the top turnbuckle every night. But Stan pulled me aside one night, and he said, "Hey, man," he said, "I'm just telling you a piece of advice. All that looks good. It looks good coming from a big guy that weighs 290 pounds. It's impressive, but I'm going to tell you now, you keep it up and you're going to shorten your career because your body cannot take that." And he was right. Eventually it did lend itself to just a series of major injuries. So by the time I got back to Japan the second time, I had a couple of more severe injuries. And then once I left Japan and in 97 signed with the WWF, I got there knowing in the back of my mind that I was probably on borrowed time because I was dealing with two injuries that just had really limited my ability in the ring, limited my ability to go to the gym and work out and keep the physique that I felt like I needed. And it was shortly thereafter that program with Brett that my body just completely failed me, and I had no choice but to retire.
Now, I remember, again, going back to what I heard you say previously, you were talking about when Hansen took you aside and he was talking about that Patriot missile. Didn't he say that, look, if you do it every night, they're going to expect it every night, so why don't you do it very sporadically so they're not expecting it all the time, right?
He did, but you know how, when I say we, you've worked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know how we are. When you do something and you get a response, what do you want to do? You want to do it again the next time.
Bigger and better.
And absolutely. And so, yeah, he gave me great advice, but I didn't take it. I didn't heed his advice, and I continued to do those things. And but he proved to be a prophet. As a matter of fact, he even told me the injuries that would probably end my career. If you keep doing that, you're going to wear your knees and you're going to wear your elbows out. And lo and behold, it was both of those that cost me my career, elbows and knees.
Now, you're talking about your career ending because of the elbows and knees. Was it heartbreaking to you at that time that you finally made it to the WWF? You're doing this big run, and then almost as quickly as you got there, you're gone. Was that hard to deal with at that time, or was it easy where you just like, okay, I've had a great career, it's time to go away?
No, it was. It was extremely disappointing, but on the other hand, when it finally happened, there was relief as well because as I go into great detail in the documentary, I had been dealing with these injuries for a number of years and dealing with just pain on a daily basis, and therefore dealing with that pain and trying to continue to work led to a horrible addiction to pain medication. So the last few years of my career, I was just like a dog chasing his tail. I'm trying to be able to go out to the gym every day and work. I'm trying to do what I'm paid very well to do in the ring every night, but I'm limited because of these injuries. I'm dealing with unbelievable pain because of these injuries. So therefore, the way you handle that pain is you take the medication. It takes the pain away. You can go out and do what you're paid to do. The injuries don't go away, but the pain goes away. So you can perform every night. So that had gotten to really be a tiresome thing, having to survive that way. But at the same time, when it was finally over, sure, it was disappointment, man. You know what it's like to fight for something you believe in, something that you dreamed as a kid of doing. And you spend all that time in the ring when you're breaking into the business, training, all those hours in the gym, all that time away from home, all the sacrifices you make to have a successful career in a business that you truly love. And you fulfill the dream by being able to do this. But it's extremely disappointing to one day realize that reality has set in. And the thing that allowed me to make a great living for all these years has finally just given out on me, my body. It's failed me. It can no longer do the things that it needs to do to allow me to continue my career. So on one hand, it was almost relief that it was over, but on the other hand, tremendous disappointment.
Well, you're talking about your injured body, which led to the painkillers, and I want to get to that. But before we do, I want to mention how to get this documentary, how to watch this documentary again at the end of the show. But really quickly, what is the documentary called, and how can they get a hold of this?
It's called Behind the Mask, Dell the Patriot Wilkes. And it was released a couple of weeks ago. Michael Elliott and Elbow Docs produced this, did a great job. It's a 3-disc set, and it's got a tremendous amount of wrestling matches on there, wrestling action. I tell my story from birth to where I'm at today and everything in between. My college football career, my very brief NFL career, my wrestling career, and we've got a lot of other great people in there with us. Several of my teammates at South Carolina are a part of this and were interviewed for this, including the 1980 Heisman Trophy winner George Rogers. And then there are just a number of superstars that I wrestled with that also agreed to be a part of this. My tag team partner, Marcus Bagwell, my tag team partner in Japan, Jackie Fulton, Bobby Fulton, Greg Gagne, Stan Hansen, Bruce Pritchard. You can see all these guys in this. And you can get it at our website, www.thepatriotwilkes.com.
Okay, and that documentary, it's a tale of redemption, but before the redemption was the darkest days. And the amount of pills that you were on, that you were taking on a daily basis because you were addicted and in order to function, what is that number, if you don't mind? I mean, because it's unbelievable, the amount that you were on.
Well, it started out innocent, taking a couple of pills before a match one night to be able to work through an injured elbow. And you fast forward, and it eventually ended up, and this is just the pain medication, I ended up doing 100 to 120 pain pills a day.
God.
That doesn't count the sleeping pills, the muscle relaxers, the Valium, the Xanax, the Halcyon. When you total all that in, I was doing probably close to 200 pills a day, but 120 pain pills a day.
I'm not, obviously this is nothing to aspire to, but your body has to have a superhuman ability to be able to take all those, right? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. And it's just through God's amazing grace that I'm talking to you today.
Absolutely.
Because, so many of my coworkers who died from a lot of the same problems weren't taking a third of that. And it cost them their lives, unfortunately. But, that's just stupid, outrageous numbers. It really is. It's crazy. It's hard to even imagine that now.
I've heard you mention this before. That was almost a full-time job for you, was procuring those pills, because again, it was a little looser back then than it is now. There are stronger laws, but it wasn't like you could just walk in and get pills whenever you wanted. I mean, you went through a lot of effort because your addiction was so strong, right?
I did. I had a doctor. When I say we, the boys, had a doctor that was back in that time, that was the doctor to the boys. He would write you whatever you needed. He lived in another state from where I lived, but that didn't matter. It didn't slow him down. I could call him today, and I could get him to call in 100 Vicodins, and I could be in another city tomorrow and call him and say, "Hey, Doc, I need another 100." He would call those in, but he eventually, as he should have, lost his license and his ability to practice medicine. So that left me in a tough spot. I don't have my supplier anymore. He's gone. He can no longer write prescriptions. So I'm still addicted, dude. I still got to get these pills, and anyone that's ever dealt with pain pill addiction knows that in an attempt to get off those, it's one of the worst sicknesses you can go through, just a horrible dope sickness. It's basically the same thing as trying to get off heroin.
Sure.
And it's an intimidating thing. And so I found a system where I could go to a doctor, get him to write me a prescription for 20, 30 pain pills. I could then take that prescription that he had written me and write down his name, his office address, his phone number, and his DEA number, which is a doctor's identification number. And I had been around this particular doctor a lot that had written the prescriptions for the boys. I'd sat in his office when he had called prescriptions in for the boys, and I learned how to talk the talk, and I learned the language. And I learned how to call them in myself, and that's how I started getting them. And, of course, as we all know, that's against the law. That's a felony offense, and so therefore arrests are occurring. And then not only do you have an addiction problem, now you got a legal problem as well. So these problems just kept on compounding and just making my life more and more of a mess.
That's unbelievable. And, I'm sitting here listening to all of the effort and all the work that you put into that. I mean, that right there really is a full-time job, satisfying that addiction. I mean, addiction can be such a demon and such a beast. I mean, at any point of your life during that period while you were putting the work in, while you were taking all the pills, was there ever a moment of clarity? Because I'm sure the whole time you knew that it was crazy, but was there ever a moment where you stopped and went, God, what is wrong with me? I mean, this is insane.
Oh, absolutely. There were almost probably daily you have those kind of thoughts. But again, I go back to that horrible, horrible dope sickness you go through when you're trying to come off an opiate-based drug. And you go through the vomiting, you go through the sweats, the tremors, the shakes. You go through horrible, horrible muscle cramps, stomach cramps, horrible diarrhea. You go through horrible headaches. 1 minute sweat's dripping off your nose, the next minute you're shaking, you're so cold. And I've never been intimidated by really anything in my life except that dope sickness. So no matter how much clarity you've got in going, wow, man, this is insane. This is stupid. It's nuts. You realize that I can't deal with that dope sickness as well. So what am I going to do? All right, I'm going to get on the phone and I'm going to pretend to be the doctor and let's call in another 100.
Now, you were talking about how eventually all of these health problems lead to legal problems, and they did for you. You went to prison because of this, right?
Yeah, I did. I unfortunately was arrested probably close to 30 times for prescription forgery. And in 2002...
Did you say 30 times?
30 times.
Oh, yeah. My God, that's crazy.
Yeah. My local paper here in the state of South Carolina, the biggest paper in the state of South Carolina, is called The State. And probably in 04, 05, they did a big article on me and about just what we're talking about now, the career, the drug issues, being able to overcome that. And through the Freedom of Information Act, they're able to go in and pull your criminal background. And I didn't realize this, and I don't say this any other way than just to make a point, and it's embarrassing. But the guy writing the article told me, he said, Dell, I was able to go in and pull your rap sheet. He said, do you realize it's 6.5 pages long? And so that's what the kind of problems it led to. And so in 2002, I stood before a judge who had enough of me. And he sentenced me to 18 months in the South Carolina Department of Corrections. And I served my time at a prison facility in Aiken, South Carolina, and was released Valentine's Day of 2003, but released as a different man than the man that went in. So actually, it saved my life. It was a good thing for me.
You know, I want to get to the fact that when you got out, you turned your life around. Before that, though, while you're in prison, because I'm sure you had never been to prison before. I mean, obviously, you're a good guy. It's not like, you grew up, with a terrible background. You were just a man with an addiction. You go to prison. Were you terrified? I mean, because I would almost imagine that you're a celebrity, especially where you live in South Carolina. Did you think there'd be a bullseye on your back? Did you think that some guy trying to make a name for himself would come at you?
Well, you go in thinking that that's a high possibility and a probability that could happen. I've heard all the horror stories about prisons and about how people are looking to make a name for themselves. But I think there were several things that prevented that from happening for me. As you mentioned, because of where I was from, South Carolina, and I'm in a South Carolina prison, I had instant recognition. They recognized who I was. They knew who I was. Whether it was being a Gamecock football fan, they knew who Dale Wilkes was, or being a wrestling fan, they knew who Dale Wilkes was, or being a fan of both football and wrestling. So that gave me instant credibility and instant respect with the inmates. And then the other thing is when you're in a situation like that and guys have had everything stripped from them, they have no freedom to do anything they want to do. They're told when to eat, when to shower, when to shave, when to go to church. They're told what time to go to bed, what time to get up. And the only things that they've got that they feel they can cling to is respect. So you give everybody their due respect in a situation like that, and I did so. And so I was able to go through without any problems whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I was able to actually, the facility they sent me to, I was literally the inmate in charge. I ran the chapel, I ran the library, I ran the commissary, I ran the canteen, and I was able to help a lot of guys out that maybe didn't have things and didn't have people on the outside that could send them money for snacks off the canteen or things from the commissary. So I was actually able to reach out and help a lot of the guys out and develop some respect, through being able to do things like that.
That is spectacular. So, you get out, like you said, you're a changed man. How were you a changed man? How did you reach this epiphany that, you turned your life around, you were clean, you were determined to stay clean? What gave you the ability to do that?
Well, I was raised in a Christian home, raised in church, and that had always been a big part of my life. But obviously, as this addiction grew and all this is going on in my life, that does not, that's no longer a part of your life. But it was through realizing that I, Del Wilkes, nobody else, had made an absolute mess of my life. Such a big mess, I couldn't straighten it up. There was no way. And all I could do was just turn back to the Lord and rely on that faith and that trust in Him that, in spite of what I had done, all the people I'd hurt, all the laws I had broken, all the times I had been arrested, that He is a very, very loving and forgiving God, and He wants the best for each and every one of us. And that's the only way I've been able to do it.
And because again, you have one of the most harrowing tales of addiction, and again, thank God you're with us, and through the grace of God that you are, but you battled addiction more than so many guys who are sadly no longer with us. And if you could say something right now to somebody out there who is also battling addiction, be it pills or booze or whatever, what would you say to them to help them through this?
Well, there are times when it seems like there is no hope, and you feel like that there's no way out and that there's no light at the end of that tunnel, but there is. But I'll tell you what it's got to become. It has got to become the most important thing in your life. You can't halfway or haphazardly go through this. You have got to fight to be clean and to be sober like you would fight to get one of your kids out of a burning house. Yeah. It's got to become the most important thing in your life, because if it's not, then it won't happen. And it's got to be the preeminent thought process every day when you get up is, no matter how tough it is, no matter how challenged I may be today, no matter how tempted I may be today, I'm going to get through this next hour without using. And then I'll get through the hour after that without using. And eventually, after a while, it becomes a lot easier and a lot more maintainable, I guess you could say.
Sure.
But it's got to be the most important thing in your life.
Well, and you know what? And you did that. What is Del Wilkes doing today? You said that, you're unable to get inside of the ring now because of your injuries. Are you feeling good, though? Are you hitting the gym? Do you have hobbies? What's going on?
Well, I don't hit the gym because of those injuries, and I've had 15 orthopedic surgeries, so I'm unable to do things like going to the gym and lifting and stuff like that, but I do walk. I try to exercise on a regular basis. I feel like I'm as healthy as probably I've ever been. Now, I do struggle. I struggle walking. I struggle getting up and down, going up and down steps. I mean, there's a price you pay for putting your body through what I put mine through. But when I was released from prison in 2003, I had a buddy of mine that was in the car business, and he got me a job at the dealership he worked at, and I've been in the automobile business since then. It's been a great career for me, a great way to make a living. I have since remarried, wonderful wife, 3 beautiful children that I have back in my life now. And I've also, too, been able to reconnect with the wrestling business because I had totally disconnected from the wrestling business when I got out due to the injuries and then just due to the mess my life was in. There was nothing I could have done. I couldn't even manage my life on a daily basis, much less do anything productive in the wrestling business. But as a result of working on this documentary for the last year and a half like we have, it's opened up a lot of doors for me. It's given me a lot of opportunity to get back out amongst the wrestling fans and do personal appearances and fan fest type of events. And it's good to be a part of it again. And it's good to be a part of it this time sober and clean and not under the influence of any type of drugs. And to be back around so many of the guys that I spent years traveling all over this world with and seeing them when I do personal appearances. So glad that we can be a part of it again where we're at now in our life.
Well, it's so, it's so good to see you happy and healthy and a part of this business again. And also hopefully helping people out there with that documentary. And again, that documentary is called Behind the Mask, Dell the Patriot Wilkes. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but they can pick that up at dellthepatriotwilkes.com, right?
That is correct. And that was also, too, one of the big reasons we wanted to do it when Michael Elliott approached me about doing a documentary on my life, is not to just tell my story. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people were familiar with my story. So it wasn't just to tell it, but it was also to hopefully to be able to help somebody that could be dealing with some of the things that I dealt with and some of the things that so many of the guys that I worked with dealt with. And so hopefully it can, and I think it has been something that's been helpful. I've been told on numerous occasions I do have a lot of opportunity at church functions, youth groups, business functions, to share my testimony and my story with others. And, you hear quite often, hey, man, thank you, I needed that. And so that's always good if somebody can be helped from it.
Dale, before we get off here, it's been such an amazing interview, and I got to thank you so many times for being on this show and helping us out and sharing your life story and hopefully inspiring others. What do you say we get off on maybe a funny note, a crazy note? Because one of the things we like to do on this show is ask everybody we interview their craziest road story or maybe a story of their most favorite rib ever in the business.
Well, I tell you, you see a lot of them, and especially when you're in a situation where you've got a lot of time on your hands, and you're coming up with ways to occupy your time, and a lot of times to kill that boredom. I guess I'll clean it up as best I can. When I was in WCW, Bagwell and I, my tag team partner, traveled together. Rode together, split a room together, worked out together, ate together. I mean, we did everything together. You're almost like husband and wife. And we also spent a lot of time with Sting. Sting traveled with us as well. And I don't remember the city we're in, but it's during the summer and it's hotter than blue blazes. And when you do TV, you have to be at the building like at noon. And you're there all day. You're taping interviews, and it's just a long day. And later that night, after probably an 8 or 9 hour day at the building, Bagwell and I get in our rental car together, and we're going down the road, and there is something that is just the most foul, obnoxious odor you can imagine. And we're both questioning each other, man, are you okay? Are you sick? What's up, dude? We're both checking the bottom of our feet. We're checking on the bottom of our shoes to see if we didn't step in something. And finally, as we're going down the road and Bagwell's looking for where this horrible odor's coming from, he opens up the glove box, and there's a paper bag, and inside the paper bag is a deposit that our buddy Sting had left us, and somehow had gotten the keys to our rental car and put in the rental car. Well, a few weeks later, down the road, here's Marcus's opportunity to return the favor, and I think we were in Austin, Texas, and we're staying at a Marriott, and it's a Sunday morning. We'd worked the night before, and we wake up that morning, and we're on our way to breakfast, and as we pass by Sting's room, Marcus sees he spots the newspaper that the front desk had put outside everybody's door. So you'd have a newspaper to read that morning. Well, the light bulb goes off in his head, and he grabs Sting's newspaper, and he goes back to our room, and he makes our buddy Sting a deposit and leaves it in his newspaper and then puts it back outside his door to his hotel room. And we go downstairs to eat breakfast, and 15, 20 minutes later, lo and behold, here comes Sting, jumping along, in a good mood. Hey, guys, how you doing? And he's got that newspaper in his hand, and he lays it on his table where he's going to go eat, and shortly thereafter discovers what had been left inside his newspaper as well. So A lot of stuff like that happens out on the road.
Did he discover it while he was eating?
He discovered that morning there at the table before he went to get his food from the buffet. Was when he discovered the insert inside his Sunday paper.
I imagine he probably did not finish breakfast that morning.
Nope, he was gone. We didn't have to worry about him that morning.
That is an amazing story. DaleThePatriotWilkes.com. That is the website to go to check out that amazing documentary, Behind the Mask. Dale the Patriot Wilkes, one heck of a career, a heck of a story. You achieved it all, the highest of highs, the lowest of lows. So amazing to see you back on top now, living your life, enjoying yourself, helping others. I can't think of anything more inspiring. Patriot Dale Wilkes, thank you so much, brother.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot, man. You have a great day out there in North Carolina, and we'll talk to you soon, okay? Thank you.
Sounds good. Take care.
Bye, man. What an amazing interview. I'm telling you, just such an inspiring story. And I know it got a little heavy, probably heavier than it's ever been on this podcast before. Amazing that it got so heavy with Jeremy out of the room. Hey, that's a joke. He's going to kill me when he hears that. But thank you guys so much for listening. You know, we're going to be going back to the fun stuff, the funny stuff, but we could not pass up such an interesting story. And once again, thank you so much to the Patriot Dale Wilkes. Check out that documentary. Check us out on Twitter at Obtuse Podcast. Also, like the Facebook page, the Obtuse Angles Wrestling Facebook page. And please subscribe to us on iTunes for more interviews just like this, like the John Morrison interview, the Brutus the Beefcake interview, the amazing Wolfie D interview, and so many more to come. We will see you guys next week. Jeremy will be back here, hopefully. And with that, rock on, everybody. Rock on. Rock on. Is that my new thing now? I guess it is. Rock on.